Hi, I'm Ann Kirschgessner, one of the NIH OITE Career Counselors, and I'm really happy to welcome you today to the Community College Day and our interview skills blitz. So let me get the slides for you and then we'll get started. Okay, so as I said, welcome again to Community College Day, and let's get started talking about interviewing skills. So I'm one of the career counselors at NIH, and I work with all of our trainees and fellows, postbacks, postdocs, and graduate students. And also earlier in my career in Western New York, I worked for many years at a community college. So I've had some great experience with community college students and really happy that you're all watching today. So I think the important thing to think about is everyone can improve their interview skills, and you can learn to feel more confident with just looking at a few tips and some preparation. One thing to remember is the interview is a two-way street. Interviews want to learn about your skills and your experience to decide if you're a fit for the position or the program. You can learn about the job, the university, colleagues, fellow students, the workplace to decide if the position is a fit for you. You want to be really positive. You want to express interest in the job or the academic program that you're interviewing for. The key to successful interviewing is effective preparation. You can prepare in many ways. You want to research the job in the company or the university in the program. You want to know about the types of questions that you're going to be asked and what the format is going to be like. You want to spend time preparing prospective answers. You want to practice your interview responses. Really important to know and reflect on your skills, your interests, your experience, and your accomplishments. First of all, you want to start by researching the program, the job, or the company or the university that's relevant to your interview. You can look at the employer or the university website. You can use networking for this. You might look at LinkedIn to find people. You want to use your professional and alumni and university and college networks. You can talk to faculty, friends, relatives, anyone who you can find who has some connection to that job, that employer, or that university. Also, talk to current employees or current students to learn a little bit more about the setting that you're going to interview in. You can also talk to other professionals in the field that might know about that organization, even if they don't work there or study there. You want to understand some of the interview formats that you might be facing. You might have a one-to-one interview with your interviewer, just you and the interviewer, or you and human resources. You might have a panel interviewer where you have a number of, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more people interviewing you as the one candidate. There might be a group interview sometimes. There's a group interview more in academic settings where there would be multiple candidates with the interviewer. And then you want to know if your interview is virtual in person. And these days, of course, so many of our interviews are virtual, or they might be on the phone. So it's important to start getting comfortable with those formats. For virtual interviews, there are a variety of different types. There might be an assessment interview where you're just on a computer, not so much an interview, taking some sort of an assessment screening test or survey. You might have a pre-recorded interview where you have questions posed to you. Often you know these in advance, and then you submit the questions within a specific time frame. This is a little bit harder because you're not seeing the person who's interviewing you, but very important to prepare for these as well. You might have a live phone interview. Often these days, whether we were in person or virtual, many first screening interviews are by telephone. And these are serious interviews. You want to take them seriously, and you want to, if someone would call you for a phone interview and it wasn't previously scheduled and you were on your way somewhere or you had another appointment, you might let that call go to your answering machine or your messaging part of your phone and then get back to them later. Or if you were really in a difficult situation that you couldn't talk, to ask them if you could possibly reschedule or call them back. If it's a pre-scheduled phone interview, you want to keep the time that the interview you've set up with your interviewer. And a live video interview, and there's so many different formats, WebEx, Zoom. You want to make sure if you have an interview like that you test your technology, your computer connection, your background. Sometimes in these days with Zoom or WebEx or whatever the platform is, things come up. There could be a fire alarm in your building. There could be construction outside. There are all kinds of your internet could go down. So one thing to remember is if you have a video interview scheduled, you want to keep the phone number or email of whoever is interviewing you to see who you can get in touch with if you need to reconnect to the call, or possibly even reschedule it if reconnecting is not possible. The other day, I was in an appointment with an NIH fellow, and there was a fire alarm in her building. So I said, well, come reconnect if you can. She got back within 5 minutes. It was all fine. So these are things that you can overcome if they come up, but be prepared just in case they do. So there are lots of different types of interview questions. There are what we call opportunity questions, and sometimes these are the icebreaker questions. But the opportunity questions are things like that allow you to take the opportunity as how you want to approach the answer. There are things like, tell me about yourself, walk me through your resume. You want to take time in advance to look at every single, everything that's on your resume so that you can talk about it. Don't put something on your resume that you're not comfortable talking about or that you can't easily talk about. What you want to do in this case is you want to think about how your experience, your knowledge, and your skills relate to that job or that academic program, and you want to take time to make those links for your interviewer. There are skill-based or technical interviews. They may ask you to tell you, the interviewer might ask you to tell them about some specific research experience you've had, how you would analyze a certain kind of data, the skills that they're looking for that you have. You want to think about examples in advance that you can present if an interview brings up more skill or technical questions. Then there are behavioral interviews. So behavioral interviewers, it's questions. It's not good behavior or bad behavior. It's past behavior predicts future behavior. So if you've done something well in terms of problem solving or dealing with a conflict or teamwork or communication in the past, you should be able to do that in the future. So they usually start with something like, give me an example, or tell me about a time when you led a group or a team, or tell me about a time when you worked through a problem in the lab that was a frustrating situation, or tell me about a time when you and your mentor had differing opinions about how to approach the project. So what they're looking for with these questions are character traits and motivations for why you're seeking the job, to see if you're a good fit. Another type of question might be, what excites you or worries you about this job or program? And that particular question, what excites you or what are you most interested in about the job, or what worries you or what you're concerned about this job or program, you want to think about those questions in advance. They're not going to come up in every interview, but they could come up, and you want to be prepared for them. Opportunity questions. So there are a whole variety of them. As I said, tell me about yourself. That's not starting out, I was born in whatever year you were born in, but tell a little bit about your academic and your work background that relates to the job or the program, why you're interested in this company, this university, what interests you most about the position or the program, what do you know about the organization, whether it's a job interview or a university industry interview. You want to know about that university, that job. You want to know something about it. You want to look at their website. You want to talk to people who work there if possible. What are your strengths and weaknesses? People often find these questions to be difficult, but they're not surprising. They might also ask you about recent accomplishments or recent failures or things haven't worked out well. These are all self-awareness questions. So we want you to reflect on your background, talk to your mentors, and faculty and anyone else who's a good advisor for you to help you identify strengths and skills you have and examples of those. Also weaknesses. Weaknesses are things that you might be working on to improve. Maybe it's public speaking, or maybe it's being more confident, or maybe it's strengthening your writing skills. So think about these things in advance and bring up examples. So for example, for a weakness, if someone said to you, what's a weakness? You wouldn't start saying, my biggest weakness is. You would say something like, I know that being a confident presenter is really important to doing well in science. So one of the things, and public speaking has been a challenge for me. So one of the things I'm doing is taking an opportunity in our lab meetings to always make a comment if I have a comment, taking opportunities to present at a poster day. Maybe you've taken a course in public speaking. All of these things are showing people that even though you may have something where you need to improve a weakness, that you're working on it. More opportunity questions. These are things where they might ask you, what do you like the most, or what do you like least about research? What's been most meaningful to you? It might be, maybe you had a class that you didn't do particularly well in. Be prepared to talk about those things. You don't want to bring those things up. If you had a course that was very challenging and difficult and it wasn't your best grade, you don't want to bring that up unless someone asks you about it, but you might want to be prepared to talk about it if that's the case. You definitely want to think about how this job or this academic program relates to your long-term career goals as you see them now. And that one, what worries you, excites you about this program. Think about those things in advance so you'll have something to say if those questions come up. Most interviews are going to be somewhere between, say, 20 minutes and an hour. So you're not going to get asked every single question, even in this presentation or on our handouts, but you want to be prepared for many of them if you do get the questions. So behavioral questions. Like I said, these are the ones that talk about giving an example of interpersonal interactions, communication, selling people on an idea, dealing with problem solving. So these are some typical behavioral questions, and you can think about, we're going to talk next about how to prepare for behavioral questions. But first we're going to talk about the interview question. So in order to prepare for that, think about your background, think about your experiences, be able to talk about them concretely and specifically, and not in over too much detail. Sometimes people are worried about rambling on or losing their focus in an answer. If you think you're rambling on in one of your answers, just take a pause, and you want to say, well, let me stop there and see what other questions you have. I'm happy to talk about any more about this if you'd like me to. So you want to develop examples that relate your skills and experience to the major job responsibilities. So back to the behavioral questions. A great technique for answering the behavioral questions is using the situation, task, action, result, the STAR technique. So what this technique involves is talking about the situation or context that you were in for an example. So someone says to you, well, give me an example of your teamwork experience. So you might say, well, I was working on a project with my PI or faculty member and another student in the lab. That's sort of the context. Describe the task, the challenge, or problem that needed to be solved. So you'd say, we were working on whatever it was, whatever that project was, whatever that issue or challenge was, you would talk about that. Then you talk about what the action was that you took. What did you do? Now you might also talk about what the other people in the group were doing, but you also want to focus on what was your reaction and how you contributed to this project or this teamwork experience. Then you talk about the outcome or the result. What happened as a result of what you did? And then sometimes you might talk about what you learned. But the key things are what was going on, who were you working with, what had to be done, what challenge or problem had to be solved, what did you do, what action did you take to solve that problem, and what was the outcome. And you can think of these things in advance. Many of these behavioral questions have to do with leadership or teamwork or communication or dealing with a conflict or solving problems, things like that. You can think in your experience about a time when you had to problem solve in the lab, or there was a difference of opinion or a conflict, or you took a leadership role or another team role, and you can come up with a brief 4-part situation, task, action, result way to answer these questions. Now, sometimes we don't know the exact question that someone's going to ask, and we can't predict every question. However, if you do get asked a question about, tell me about a time when you, and it was something that you hadn't prepared to talk about, just think of, is this something I ever did? Pause for a bit. Is this something I've had some experience with? And if you have, take this 4-part, this is the context that I had this experience in. This is what I did. This was a challenge. This is what I did. And then this was the result. So it's really important also that you want to have a good list of questions to ask your interviewer. What's a typical day like? Can you tell me more about team projects? Or if it's an academic program, ask about the program. You might talk about the management style of the person you're speaking to, if that person's going to be your supervisor, or if you're talking to the team, you might ask them, what are the next steps? When should I expect to hear from you? Even if your interviewer has asked you answered every single question that you have, and they say, what questions do you have for me? You want to take a minute and say, it's been such a great opportunity to learn about this job or this program. I'm really interested to know more about XYZ. You want to make sure that they know that you're engaged and you're interested. So you want to at least follow up on their opportunity that they've given you to ask questions and keep connecting with them. Managing stress. In an interview, it's a very exciting opportunity. Sometimes one thing to think about is you have all this energy and all this excitement, and it can be stressful, but it also can be energizing. So if you weren't excited, if you weren't energized by interviewing for this job or a program that was important to you, you would walk out of the room and they would say, does he care about that? Does she care about this job? So you want to think about this energy that you have and think about it as excitement, as well as it could be stressful in an anxious way. So you want to breathe, you want to maybe do yoga, maybe people work out, they talk to their friends, they might take a walk. We've got some links here that can be helpful. You want to ask for support from your friends, your family, advisors, or faculty. Your college counseling or career center can help you in stress management and also in preparing for actual interviews themselves. After the interview, you want to be sure to send a thank you email. You want to follow up if you said you would send any additional materials or information. If your interviewer has let you know when you might hear and you don't hear at that time, say they're going to let you know in about a week and you don't hear, you could also near the end of that time send them an email to let them know how interested you still are in the job or the opportunity, and you're very interested to know when they would be making a decision. Practicing for the interview. Preparing is really important and practicing is important as well. So at your community college, if you have a career center or an advising center, you may be able to have a mock interview and practice with a career counselor or an advisor. You might practice with a mentor or a faculty member or a colleague or a fellow student or a friend or a family member. You can also practice your answers out loud by yourself. That can also help you to think a little bit, or no, I don't really want to say that. I want to say this, it would be better. I'm not saying you should have an exact script, an exact paragraph to say. I think you want to think about points you want to make. And then you might type up some potential answers to interview questions just to give yourself, get ready, but you're not going to take these answers in with you. You would just use these to practice. We've got a couple interviewing articles, then I think I'm pretty sure we're going to be making these PowerPoints available later, and so you can see those. And then more resources. On our NIH OITE website, we have lots of prior videocasts about all different kinds of interviewing. On our YouTube channel, we have interviewing presentations, and our careers blog has quite a few interviews about different aspects of interviewing. So to sum up, really important to prepare, think about your skills, think about what interests you about the job or the program, own those skills, think about examples so that you can present them to your interviewer. You want to listen carefully to your interviewer's questions. You want to make sure that you're answering the question they're asking, not the exact one maybe you prepared for that could be a little bit different. So when your interviewer asks you a question, just take a moment to pause, to let that question sink in, and then you can convey your answer. If they ask you a question that's you haven't thought about before, or it's a new concept for you, or something you need to think about, you might say, well, that's a good question. Let me think for a moment about that. And then you're going to talk them through your answer so that they get the sense of your thinking process. And be positive, smile, engage as much as you can with your interviewer. Sometimes people are more reserved, or they have a more standard interview posture, so they're not engaging a lot with you, or they're not so conversational. You just want to do your best to present your interest and your motivation and your skills for that job or that academic opportunity. So I want to wish you good luck with your interviews, and I hope you have a great day for the rest of Community College Day, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.